Welcome back to Real Estate 101. I'm your host, Joe Terceira, and today we're going to talk a little bit about second story additions, and I'm pleased to be joined once again by Daniel Ott of Artisan Contracting. Daniel, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back, Joe.
So Dan, tell me, why would anybody consider a second story addition?
Well, with any type of addition, there's a myriad of answers as to why any particular client is going to choose any particular type of renovation. But one of the obvious ones is they need more space. And contrary to popular belief, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, a second story addition is very easy to do. Another reason could be it's a very easy way to increase the resale value of your home.
All right. Is this a common request?
Oddly enough, Joe, and I say that because I'm in the business and I know the ins and outs of the business, so oddly enough to me, this is not as common a request as I would think that it should be. A lot of clients don't actually think about a second story addition until I mention it. Or I often get told that they've thought about it before, but they've dismissed the idea before even calling any contractors due to what they've thought or what their friends have told them about it.
All right. So let's say I'm thinking about doing a second story addition on my home. Is my home structurally strong enough, or do I need to strengthen my walls?
Joe, this is by far the most common reason why clients have rejected the idea of a second story addition before even talking to me. In a simple answer, yes, your house is strong enough to support a second story. We have built second stories on top of 2x8 wood construction, on top of 2x6 wood construction, on top of 2x4 wood construction, concrete block construction, even double brick construction. There are only two instances when it becomes questionable whether or not your second story can be supported. One, if your existing foundation is falling apart and is not adequately supporting your bungalow,
right,
then no, it shouldn't support a second story either.
Right.
Other than that, if you are wanting a 2-story brick house, which is not as common anymore, but that is when we start questioning the size of the footings in the basement. And we're not saying you can't do it, but we have to dig up the basement footings and verify the size of them. Other than that, there is no other situation where you cannot support a second story. Even if we have to add a few posts or something, the majority of the structure is fine.
Okay, so isn't it cheaper to just add an addition to the side of your home as opposed to trying to build it up?
No. When you put an addition to the side or the rear of your home, you have to put a foundation under it. And different story altogether, sometimes you can build it on piers, but most of the time you have to put a full foundation in. And yes, you gain a basement, but the reason you're putting an addition on your home is probably not to increase your basement footprint, it's to increase the footprint of your main level. Before you get out of the hole, as we like to say in the contracting world, so when you start building the actual structure that you want to build, you could spend up to $30,000 on your foundation. Think about if you take that same, let's say you're building a master suite addition to the rear of your home. It's about 600 square feet. Let's take that same 600 square foot addition and put it on top of your house. That $30,000 that you just saved on the foundation, you can put into higher ceilings, crown molding, better flooring. You can make a much nicer addition with the same amount of money.
Now, is this something that can only be done seasonally, or can you do it all year round, like in the winter?
I cannot count how many times, and I'm good with math, I have heard this question. Can you work at all in the winter? Yes. In fact, especially with second stories, I prefer to work in the winter.
Really?
When we do a second story addition in the spring, summer, or fall, we 100% guarantee that you will have water leakage. Okay? I'm not saying you're going to have a lot, but blue tarps are what we put on top of your house after we've ripped your roof off. They're water resistant, not waterproof. So if you get 2 or 3 days of downpour, now of course we try to look at the weather and work around that, right? Look for a couple weeks of straight clear weather, but that doesn't always happen. The weatherman's wrong 90% of the time. So The simple thing is, in the winter, snow doesn't leak.
It freezes.
Yeah, and it's easy to get rid of. You just blow off the tarp in the morning and away you go.
So why do most second story additions I've seen look like a big box?
Only the ones you've noticed look like a big box. The ones that you haven't noticed look like they've always been second story additions. And we've talked about that before on one of my episodes, where we talk about how when Artisan Contracting does an addition, we want it to look like it's always been there. If it blends in with the rest of the house, people aren't going to notice it.
Okay, so how do you get away from the boxy look?
The most cost-effective way to build a second story, and sometimes people are looking for that, is to build a square box on top of your square box bungalow. But you don't want it to look just like a box. So the first thing we do is we add a skirt roof to the front of the house. Now what that is kind of like a porch roof, but it only comes out 2 feet. And it's between the main level and the second level. And we call it a skirt roof because from the road, it looks like your house has a skirt on it. After that, we stagger walls, we make different heights, and a lot of it has to do with roof lines. So if we can add different roof directions and different roof slopes, we can really design the house to look fantastic. Now, of course, all of those cost a little bit more each time you do something.
Right. Okay. So what about some, interior design elements? How does that play a role?
So interior design is going to come into effect in anything you do, really. But 2 of the major ones for a second story addition are, 1, your stairs. This is something a lot of people don't think about. You have to get up there somehow.
Right.
Now, the easiest place to put a stair is on top of the stairs that go to your basement. But on most bungalows, the stairs to the basement have been placed in a back corner, or they're in a place where it's not feasible to put a stair on top of them just because you'd have to start outside or something like that. So what we usually do is we take a center bedroom or a bedroom that's close to the center of the house, and we change that into what we call a fold back stair. So you go up a few rises, you have a landing, and then you come back a few rises.
Right.
And what that does is enables us to, when you exit the stairs onto the second story floor, you're generally in the center of the house, and it makes design elements on both floors much easier. Now, the second thing to think about, we kind of touched on, is when you're putting bedrooms upstairs, which is most often what happens, you don't need the bedrooms on the main floor anymore. So we take one of them up with a stairway, and we'll take the walls out or whatever. But a bungalow is self-sufficient, so as soon as you've put a second story on, you've now duplicated a lot of the uses of the main level. So you're going to have to redesign at least parts of the main level. Sometimes people redesign the whole thing.
And what about mechanical systems like heating?
Even in a new home, 2-story home, you're going to have people tell you it's too cold upstairs in the winter and too warm upstairs in the summer because the efficiency of the heating system is not working to its full potential. And that's just the way that systems are done. They're up to code, but they're not as efficient as they could be. Now, we at Artisan have come up with our own way of doing second story additions, and I'm not saying we're the only ones that have come up with this way, but we did come up with it our own, and a lot of other contractors have come on board with a similar way of doing things now. So the first thing to keep in mind is that your ceiling of your main level is not strong enough to be a floor for your second level. Okay, it was never designed to hold human weight, except for the occasional crawl around in your attic. Okay, so you have to put new floor joists up. Now we can do that without taking the ceiling joist down, and the easiest way is to put a new floor joist beside, a taller one, beside your ceiling joist. Now, it has to be raised a little bit to get rid of, or to get higher than all the wires and stuff that are in the ceiling joists. We at Artisan said, well, why not raise it even further? So we have between the top of the ceiling joist and the bottom of your floor joist a 10-inch airspace. In that space, we can run all kinds of mechanical systems. Your basement will have a large heat duct and a return air duct running the length of the house and have small round ducts coming off to do the rooms on the main level.
All right.
A 2-story house will also have that, and those round ducts go all the way to the upstairs. And by the time they get up there, that's why the efficiency of the air is either too cold or too hot, depending on the season, because there's only so much air keeping itself either warm or cool through that pipe. Well, we create a chaseway in a closet on the main level, and we bring those large ducts up to the ceiling of the main floor, and we run that same thing upstairs as you have downstairs. And now you get virtually the same efficiency upstairs as you have downstairs. Our heating contracting company, the one that we use now, we've used for about 6 years. And the first time they did this for us, at the start of the job, they said, this is ludicrous. Who does this? By the time they were done the job, they said, wow, this is amazing. We should do this even on new homes. It just makes sense.
It works.
Yeah.
So for today's final question, what about bathrooms? I mean, when you're doing a second story addition, do you have to, design the bathroom on the addition right above the bathroom on the main level?
No, not with the way that we do that floor system that I was just talking about. Usually, yes, you would have to put it on top because the drains have to be in a place where they can get to the other drains. And you can't be drilling 3-inch holes through any old floor joist.
Right.
Okay? With that 10-inch airspace, we can run it anywhere. And we've actually changed the way we do our systems now. That was the original way of doing things. We can still do that depending on the house. But that would still require a steel beam through the middle of the house and possibly posts, because you still can't get a floor joist to stretch all the way across your entire house. Well, one of the things that we may suggest now is a floor truss. Okay, so we don't need that 10-inch airspace anymore because a floor truss is mostly open space. It's just 2x4 webbing going up and down.
Right.
The floor truss is deeper, it's thicker, so the height of the building is still going to be the same, but that 10-inch airspace is taken up inside the joist now. But the same thing, the plumbing has enough room to fall, we call that fall, to drain properly from whatever corner of the house that we're at. And so what we try to do at Artisan is think outside the box. If we can engineer it, we do, because typically that means we can do things that other people haven't thought of.
All right, Dan, good stuff. Thanks for coming on today's show.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
If anybody has any more questions or is interested in a second story addition, they can get in contact with Daniel Ott of Artisan Contracting. I'm your host, Joe Terceira. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.